Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast, your ticket to all things college football. Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? Join us as we talk college football from the national championship to college rivalries to bowl games to the Heisman Trophy to which conference is the best. We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Danielle, and happy Thursday. Thank you for tuning in today. I appreciate you all so much. I am so sorry I was gone last week. I took an unexpected week off. I was planning on taking Thursday off because if you guys did not know, I feel like I mention it literally every single episode. I am a senior at the University of Colorado Boulder, and we started classes last week, my senior year. I am taking 21 credits, and if you are familiar with the credit system, the average amount to take a Boulder is 15, so I'm definitely taking, it's 2 more classes, but I am definitely loading my schedule this semester so I can be less stressed my second semester of senior year, but I was taking Thursday off to kind of adjust to my classes, find a routine, find a rhythm I like. Also, I was moving into an apartment, and so I literally couldn't move in until Sunday night, 12 hours before classes started, so I was running around, trying to move in, everything, honestly just trying to, shove clothes everywhere, and so I was very stressed about that, getting just, settled, so I was going to take Thursday off, and then on Tuesday, I got some heartbreaking news that a close family friend of mine passed away unexpectedly. It was very hard to deal with, and I really took the rest of the weekend to, send love to his family. I went to his memorial service, and it was just really difficult. I was not in the headspace to record, if we're being honest. I could not come on here and be my light and cheery self knowing that I was grieving in some way, and again, it was not someone I was too close with, but it was still very difficult because it was so unexpected, and it really made me appreciate life and just people I have in it. And then this past weekend with the Chadwick Boseman death, I guess I just want to say, really hold your loved one tight, especially loved ones tight, especially during this time. It's very difficult. I feel like I've been experiencing more loss than normal over the past weekend. There was another family emergency relating to someone in my life that came up that I had to be there for. It was kind of a difficult weekend, but I'm very sorry I left you guys hanging. I'm sure you still got your college football news, though. But yeah, that's kind of my life update. It's my second week of classes. I'm actually recording this on Tuesday morning at 4:57 a.m. Because if you guys didn't know something about me, I'm a morning person. Not just a morning person. I woke up at 3 a.m. today to work out. I've already worked out, and it's not even 5 a.m. I love feeling that accomplished. Obviously, there are days that I just don't do it, but if I know I have a lot of stuff to get done, I will do that. We're more motivated in the morning, so I tried recording this yesterday afternoon after class, and I was just exhausted. It was not going. It was not it. And so, yeah, happy Tuesday morning when I am recording this. It's still dark out. Will literally watch the sunrise as I record, but we got some very exciting stuff to talk about today. College football is almost back, you guys. It is coming up. It's literally kicking off, and tonight there's a game. And Saturday it kicks off, and then next week is the big slate of games. But we're going to go over all of that. So let's try a rundown for the day. We got some big news. The Big Ten coming back. More opt-outs. There were a lot of opinion pieces this week that I want to discuss, specifically one from the New York Times. And let's talk about the protests around the world with with regards to social injustice due to the Jacob Blake shooting and how that is affecting sports as well as college football. And then we are going to look forward to this weekend, or tonight as well, and tonight when you're listening to this, and go over the lines, the predictions, what to look out for, how the season's going to be weird. It's already been a weird season because we had an FCS game on Sunday. And then I'm going to recap not just a game, which was a historical documentary I watched for one of my classes, actually, and I thought it'd be very fun to discuss here. It had a lot of prevalence to college football and society today and how sports are run, and so, especially with the social movements going on, I feel like it's a very important topic to touch upon. I really try not to be too political on here, but I also know that it's very important, and the world we live in, we can't just not talk about it. And we're going to finish it off with a top 10 quarterbacks of the 2020 season to look out for. So without further ado, I'm going to have some of my iced coffee, and we'll get into it. So, our first segment of today, people, it has been a whirlwind week. I feel like it was a lighter week of news. Usually, I'm, stressed that I'm gonna, record early because if you guys didn't know, I usually record these on Tuesday and Thursday or Friday, but I'll be recording on Saturday right after games now that the season is back. But I'm always stressed that there's gonna be big news over the weekend, and I was also worried because there was some big news, but I was like, darn it, I'm not recording this week. It was kind of a lighter week, though, so it was kind of nice. I don't know. I wasn't, glued to my TV. There was definitely more going on in the world of sports, though, which, again, we will get into because this is a college football podcast, but I'm also aware that other sports have a big impact on college football. But so, this past week, the Big Ten, kind of a mess right now. We're just going to put it like that. I think there's no denying that, if you guys didn't know, I believe it was 17 days ago, when this report came out, that the Big Ten officially suspended their fall season due to COVID-19 concerns. There was a lot of upset and protest over this. Well, not protest per se, but there was definitely some rumblings and some upsets from players and parents who wanted to play, especially high-profile players like Justin Fields. Players' parents came out and tweeted their upset and just anger about it because for a lot of these players, it is their shot. And also, they just love college football. And so, over the past week, the Big Ten announced that, there was speculation, I guess they didn't announce, that they would be looking into starting their season Thanksgiving weekend, which was very, met with a lot of controversy, I guess you could say, because obviously they suspended their season, they were looking into spring play, and now they're going back on their word, and people are just like, what's going on? I mean, I was like that. I remember I was literally on my bike, biking with SportsCenter, and then the news came on, and I was like, what? I had to pause, and I was like, what's going on? And so I think Paul Feinman, a college football analyst, put it best when he said, it's really sad to say this, because 5 weeks ago, the Big Ten was considered the gold standard in big-time college football, and now it's the punchline to almost any joke you can think of. I think it's an indicator of how dysfunctional this league has become. What a laughingstock this league has become. Yes, like I said, the Big Ten was looking into having a Thanksgiving weekend, which is just kind of what? I mean, there's so many questions. How in the heck would this work? I've touched upon the fact that I'm still, looking into how it's going to work if the Big Ten and the Big Pac-12 play in the spring, and are we going to wait for the college football to happen until, Memorial Day, but then, players in the NFL, and what if players get drafted during the season? Are they just going to get up and leave? So there's a lot of questions about that. But over the weekend, photos were released of Ohio State players and parents protesting the cancellation / the delay of the season, citing lack of transparency. These photos were released, and it was held at Ohio State. Signs like, we want to play, let us play, were circulating around. And again, that goes back to the fact that these players and parents are angry because there are a lot of health concerns, but at the end of the day, these kids do want to play, and being completely blindsided by that. Not blindsided, but it does stink. And President Donald Trump, good old President Donald Trump, tweeted that it was disgraceful Big Ten players were not suiting up for games. And this was met with a lot of controversy online, as every single tweet that Donald Trump puts out is, not going to try to get too political, but a lot of people were tweeting back that there is a pandemic going on, there is a virus that is killing millions of people, and he is just sitting here there's a virus going around that is infecting millions of people, and he is here tweeting about college football. And he tweeted it is disgraceful that Big Ten is not playing football. Let them play. Trump tweeted on Friday. He also reiterated this opinion on Saturday as Central Arkansas and Austin Peay took the field for an official FCS game. So, yeah, Big Ten, kind of a whirlwind, kind of a firestorm right now, I guess you could say. There's a lot of questions on how they could even pull this off, per se. Because would they make the other Power 5 conferences that are playing this season, the ACC, the SEC, and the Big 12, would they make them finish their season and then have them wait till February or March so that they could play? Would they have a shortened season that goes 1 month, 6 to 8 games, and then meet in the college football playoffs? But then how would that work with the rankings, and would that be a fair system? obviously. And we've talked about the fact that Nebraska and Ohio State were both looking into playing independently this season, and the Big Ten commissioner shut that down. Nebraska was very on it from the very beginning before they officially canceled their season that if it did happen, they would look into ways to play. And I think the big thing that we've learned from the firestorm that is the Big Ten is that money talks. So 17 days after announcing they would attempt to play in spring 2021, a decision that came 6 days after the Big Ten released their fall 2020 schedule, the league is now considering a Thanksgiving week start. The problem with this is that it seems from an outside perspective, the Big Ten does not know what they are doing, and they just need to get it together. As people on Twitter and online would say, pick a lane. I don't know if you guys have heard that saying. I said that to my parents the other day. They were like, what are you talking about, Danielle? They were so confused. But pick a lane, as people on Twitter would say. There's a lot of increasing rift as well between coaches and players and presidents. So Big Ten coaches joined on a conference call to discuss the schedule options. League presidents who voted overwhelmingly not to play this fall may be hearing questions from trustees who employed them. So like I said, money talks and money creates discussions and money gets the job done. I think if we learned anything from this upcoming college football season, it's that the money is driving certain programs to play. I don't know which program specifically. Obviously, I'm an outsider just like giving my opinion on it, but it's very clear that the reason some teams have not canceled their season, they do want to play, but also there is almost billions of dollars for some programs, not billions, there are millions and millions of dollars involved for some programs with this. And so what I speculate happened is that they canceled the season and then big donors and trustees went to certain schools in the Big Ten and threatened to revoke like a $10 million donation. That would cause the school to rethink this and demand a season. So think about that. If you're a generous alumni of, say, Michigan, the University of Michigan, and you've donated like $5 million this last season to help build a stadium, or say they were building a new stadium, or like an athletic department, whatever. They cancel the season and you say, that's not okay. You go to the presidents, go to the athletic directors, go to the Big Ten commissioner, and you say, we want a season or we will be revoking our $5 million. Michigan would be furious. They would say, give us a season right now. Because as we've gone over, college football is a money-making industry. It is a $4 billion industry in 2019. That's absolutely crazy to me. I mean, I think when I was younger, the thought that college football would be a $1 billion industry, I didn't want to think about it. I was so naive to it. I just wanted to see it as players going on the field, doing what they love, giving their all. No, there's billions of dollars involved in this. And so if a $5-10 million donation from a trustee or a generous alumni can cause programs to demand play after they postponed a season due to a pandemic, money talks. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of. I know from my experience, my high school, I went to a private school, and I'm not going to say which private school, obviously, but there were a lot of times where you knew something was going to change because someone donated money or someone threatened to revoke money. I'm not going to go into specifics or whatever, but there were some controversies and people threatened to revoke money and things got changed. Things got done. That's just facts. That is from a high school perspective. I cannot imagine a college perspective. I do not know any trustees or generous alumni at Boulder, but I'm sure there have been talks about that at my school, my alma mater. So yeah, money talks. There's no way around that. I think it's going to be really interesting in 5 to 10 years when we get a college football coronavirus pandemic, like HBO documentary. Speaking of HBO, little plug here, not really a plug because I'm not a part of it whatsoever, but I watched The Weight of Gold the other week on HBO Now or HBO Max. Really great documentary. I really recommend it for looking at the mental health of Olympic athletes. Mental health in athletes is something I'm very passionate about, and so I highly recommend you guys check that out. But back to that, when they do a documentary on all this, it's going to be so interesting to hear from the donors, hear from the alumni who did threaten to pull money. There's no way around that. There's a lot of things we don't want to admit to ourselves when it comes to college football, and for me, the two things recently in the past few weeks is that the big schools are not hiding coronavirus. I'm, again, not making any accusations. I'm not saying schools are. I've literally no information. But as we saw Colorado State and now Florida State, I mentioned a few weeks ago, big schools are trying to hide the coronavirus, or they're trying to hide potential health hazards. so that they can have a season so they can make this money, which is understandable. I hate to say it's understandable because it's not okay when you are jeopardizing the health of your players, your fans, your staff, your students. When you're doing that just so you can have a college football season, that is not okay in my opinion, but it is a billion-dollar industry. And I think something also I am naive with regards to that is that football is, again, a billion-dollar industry. It's kind of crazy to think about. I never wanted to think that when I was a kid, and I would go to games and there'd be hundreds of thousands of people at an Alabama game. I would always just be like, they're just there because they love it, and the school loves that they're there, and the school does love that they're there. I mean, as someone who goes to a big football school, and Colorado is nowhere near what Alabama is, we truly thrive on Saturdays, and football is life there, but it's also a money industry. So, the first question with regards to the Big Ten potentially changing their mind is, what happened between August 11th when the Big Ten commissioner announced that they would be canceling their season, and now Commissioner Kevin Warren has been criticized for his lack of transparency in making the no fall football announcement on the date. Then he did an open letter to the Big Ten community on August 19th. Warren wrote the decision to postpone the fall season would not be revisited. And despite the overwhelming vote to not play, it is known that Iowa, Nebraska, and Ohio State either supported the fall season or preferred to wait a little longer to make a decision. So I think that's also something we are learning from this, is that a lot of schools were blindsided at this decision. Obviously, they were informed of it, but there are probably some schools that thought they'd be able to push it out a little longer and find a way to play. In some forms, coaches and officials at these schools are not willing to let this go. They see recruits and, by extensions, future NFL draft picks looking elsewhere because of the spring football decision. If the Big Ten follows through with not playing this season, it is reasonable to assume Ohio State quarterback Justin Fields has played his last snap. And again, Micah Peters from Penn State, linebacker. He's one of the more than 50 Power 5 players who have already opted out of the season. They see that the College Football Playoff committed to those leagues is playing in the fall. So they see, the Big Ten schools that want to play see that there's no way they can be involved in the playoffs if they play in the spring. And again, going back to money, Ohio State Athletic Director Gene Smith estimated their athletic department would lose $50 million playing a season without their fans. That's just without the fans. I cannot imagine how much money they're going to lose if they don't have a season. That's just absolutely bonkers to me. I'm itching. So let's look at how other leagues are handling this. If anything, the controversy with the Big Ten has shown that there is a stratisfaction among the Big Five. The ACC, Big 12, and SEC, and in some cases even the Pac-12, have the upper hand. SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey has been transparent and progressive in releasing medical updates and advanced testing protocol. If the league postpones the season, it's really not on him. He's done everything he could. And while I do rat on the SEC sometimes for continuing to play and being part of the demographic in the country that is staying open, it is noted that they are trying to do everything. And the stratisfaction may hinge on the Big 12 finding its own expert to lessen the concerns over the heart condition myocarditis. Dr. Michael Akron of the Mayo Clinic convinced the Big 12 leaders that heart inflammation as a result of COVID-19 was not necessarily a threat. Myocarditis was a big threat in the Big 10 and Pac-12 decision to postpone the season, which is very noteworthy. And the ACC announced last Friday they would be testing 3 times a week during game week, and that the Big 12 is going to make similar announcements. And despite everyone hating on the Pac-12 all the time, they've been pretty stable compared to the Big 10. Silent coaches, no player revolts, no talk of going back on their decision. Everyone's on the same page. They released a detailed document as to why they postponed the season. If it wasn't for laying off 88 of its Pac-12 network employees, the summer might have been Larry Scott's shining moment. So what's going to happen? I feel as though we should get a decision before Saturday when games kick off, because it seems weird to just say, well, maybe the Big Ten will play, as we were discussing Final Four contenders, and say, well, maybe Ohio State, maybe Michigan, maybe Penn State. This would also require other conferences to wait for bowl games until the Big Ten plays. I mean, again, it would be kind of weird if, like, Clemson and Alabama and Notre Dame or whatever finish their season in December, and then they have to wait till March to play a game, but then there's the NFL draft, and this season is going to be unlike any other season. There's no doubt about that. And it all seems like a way to satisfy donors. Obviously, the players want to play. When they announced the cancellation of the season, they should have mentioned this and had a plan in motion if they did want something to happen. Again, they're going back on their word. I know, like, in my personal life, I hate when people go back on their word. I am known to do that sometimes, not gonna lie. In, like, my personal life, like, plans, because I'm an introvert. But, they should have mentioned this, that I had a plan in motion if they did want something to happen. Yeah, let's talk about the Big Ten enough. We spent 15 minutes on that, but money talks, and the Big Ten kind of not doing too hot right now. But let's get into some opt-out news. So, Kenneth Gladwell, an All-American running back, I previewed him a few weeks ago in a running back preview for the Memphis Tigers, and he's a preseason favorite for the Heisman. He's opted out of the season due to COVID-19 concerns. It was revealed in a news report that he has lost 4 members to the virus, according to his father. He could be a top 3 or 5 running back in the 2021 draft, but he's not made that decision yet. So, again, another star player opting out, and even, I don't know if it's bigger news per se, but the star wide receiver for the LSU Tigers, Jamar Chase, has opted out. No official announcement has been made, but he's informed the school. He's the 3rd LSU Tiger to opt out of the season during defensive end Neil Farrell and cornerback Kerry Vincent. I think as the week goes on, we will see more big players as the season gets closer. It's kicking off this weekend, technically. Not a lot of the big schools are playing this weekend, but we will definitely see more concerns. I think this comes down to security and knowing that if they get injured or sick, this season could be affected and hurt their draft stock. So, yeah, I think that's things we have to remember. And it just kind of stinks that we are at this place in our, like, the season where we don't know if players are going to be playing. We don't know what big players are going to suit off this weekend. It stinks. And I wish they had more security on it. But, yeah, it's a weird college football season, you guys. I mean, I was telling my friends this morning, I was like, oh, like, football starts this weekend. We're not going to be able to hang out or whatever. And they were like, oh, like, they didn't know. And these are my friends that aren't involved in college football. They're not informed. I use the acronym CFB, like college football, because when I'm texting, I'm like, what's that? I'm like, all right, you're not informed. But even then, my parents were asking me, like, is college football happening? Like, what's happening this weekend? Because usually the first weekend of the season, everyone knows who's kicking off. With the big Alabama-USC game, Clemson, Texas, making up team matches. But you have the big playoffs, and you know what's going to happen. You have your excitement, you have your watch parties, you have your buffalo chicken dip ready to go with your chips and salsa. That sounds really good at 5:16 a.m. But, yeah, you kind of know what's going to happen, and now we really don't. It's kind of weird to think about. I don't know how I feel about that, but I'm just taking a deep breath. I'm, like, praying the season happens. Obviously, it's going to be a very weird season. There's no doubt about that. We are not going to have, we're not going to have a normal season. As I'm going to talk about in the next segment with the player protests going on and the literal pandemic, we're not going to see normal season. There's going to be a lot of social change in the system, and as I will detail, hopefully this was a summer of change in a positive way. I don't know, but with all that being said, you guys, stick around because coming up, we are going to be discussing what's going on in the sports world, the social movements going on, the injustice, racial injustice, how it is affecting college football, and we will also look forward to this week's games and give some lines for you, some betting numbers, and who to watch out for, so stick around.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Hello, everybody. We are back. We are back with our second segment of the day. It is 5:20 now. The sun is not rised or risen. Is it risen? I don't know. Fun fact about my family while we're here in the morning, an early morning talk. I actually have a lot of energy right now, if you can't tell. I haven't really had much coffee. I had like an energy drink while I was working out. But my family are the biggest morning birds. And whenever I meet someone who's like a morning person in some way, it makes me so happy because my family wakes up around 3:30, 4 a.m. every single day. We have 5 huskies or rescues. Also, update on the dog. He's actually doing really well. If you guys didn't know, one of my dogs has cancer and it's pretty bad. But he's actually doing really well. Like, he's doing better than he was before. He's walking. Loving life. So we're just trying to give them the best life we can. But yeah, we have 5 huskies, and so because of that, they like walking them before people are out. But like when I say people are out, like they will wear like the headlamps that like strap around your head, and they'll look, I don't even know what they look like, but they like walk the dogs like it's a sled team at 4 a.m. in the morning. It's so funny. But my family are huge morning people. If you guys think it's crazy that I worked out at 3 a.m. today, my dad, if he has to travel, well, obviously he's not traveling right now, but if he has to travel for work or anything, he will literally get up at 1, 2 a.m. if he has like a 6 a.m. flight, to work out. So that's where I get it from, but huge morning people. One of my friends from school is actually a huge morning person too, and she just Snapchatted me, and I was like, oh, people are up like me. Not a morning person if I don't want to be, but I don't know if anyone else is like this. If I tell myself, like, all right, like yesterday, I was going to record this podcast yesterday, and I was like, I have no energy. This would have, like, it would be so bad. I could just tell I was not going to be excited about talking or want to talk. I was like, all right, you're going to do it tomorrow morning before your classes, but you're going to wake up at 3 a.m. and do it. And I was like, all right, Danielle, you got this. And so if I could tell myself, like, I have things to do in the morning, I cannot just sit around and I cannot sleep in, I will be a morning person. It'll give me energy. I'll probably crash around 9 a.m. honestly, but it's okay. Right now we're doing great. Where was I going with this? Yeah, so 5:22 now. That was a 2-minute segment. But yes, last segment I was touched on. We were going to be talking about the player movements and racial injustice going on in this country. I am not going to get too political here. I also don't believe that race is political. I don't believe that we should be making the color of your skin a political conversation. I think that everyone has their own beliefs, where you stand, where you lean, but please just know that killing and shooting innocent people based on their skin is wrong. There's so many wrong things about it. Please register to vote. That is a PSA as well. But so if you guys didn't know, last week the NBA, WNBA, NHL, and MLB and other sporting events were like tennis were postponed due to the shooting of Jacob Blake, a 29-year-old black man in Kenosha, Wisconsin. I apologize if I mispronounced Kenosha. The NBA debated the canceling their season with protests over notable coaches such as Doc Rivers. I really recommend, if you have not watched Doc Rivers' video, that speech for like post-game talk, I believe it came out the day before the Bucks decided to protest their game against Magic. It was really good. It was really powerful, really informative. I highly recommend it. As a white woman, I cannot relate to their struggles. I cannot imagine what it's like to be a black person in America right now, but I empathize. I am an ally. I am trying my hardest to be an ally in any way I can, and I really recommend to watch that video to educate yourself on just what it's like. I think the past few months have been really I don't want to say it's been hard for me as a white woman, because that would give it like a white savior complex, and I don't want to have that by any means. I think these past few months, and I know, like, I've talked with my parents about this, a lot of my friends, it really opened my eyes and kind of made me realize that while I don't consider myself racist, I am not racist by any means. I've always been pro Black Lives Matter, I've always been pro getting rid of racial injustice. These past few months have really shown me that while I'm an ally, and while I support Black Lives Matter, while I am doing my hardest to research and be there and learn, I think that's the biggest thing we can do right now. There's still millions of people out there that don't, and again, like, your views are your views, and I'm not going to attack you if you don't believe that Black Lives Matter, but, I mean, I guess, I know where I stand, and if you stand differently, okay, But I think these past few months have shown me that we still have so much work to do as a country. I think it's just crazy to me that in 2020, a year with a pandemic and the death of like Chadwick Boseman, that was also a weird thing that happened this week, that we are still fighting racial injustice that literally people fought for when they abolished slavery in the 1960s with Martin Luther King. It's absolutely just bonkers to me, and it's really sad. I don't want to twist my words. I also am aware that as a white woman, an upper middle class white woman, I am not the person to speak on this. I can have a voice and I can make an impact and I can tell you to vote. I can tell you to do your research. I really recommend watching the documentary 13 on Netflix. I can tell you everything you need to do. I think this past week, opened my eyes and I was doing a lot of research. I also know that I'm not the person to speak on this matter. And my voice, while I am being an ally, I am not the person who should be leading this movement. And I want to put it in the hands of people that are more qualified than me, because I'm just being honest. But yeah, I guess this past week was just kind of eye-opening, especially with everything going on in my personal life. Watching the Jacob Blake news happen, life is truly just precious. I hate to be that person because I feel like we say that every single day, but literally, my family friend that passed away, I saw him 3 hours before he passed away. Like, just be blunt. But anyways, these sports leagues were canceled, and going back to that, I really recommend watching Doc Rivers' speech. It really taught me a lot about just like what it's like to be a Black person in America right now. And again, I will never understand. I will never understand why people treat Black people this way. I will never understand what it's like to be a Black person in America. But they continue playing. The NBA decided to continue playing. But the movement has not been forgotten by any means, and it makes me sick that in 2020 we still have police brutality and racial injustice. And I mean, it's just wild to me. But if you guys do not know about Jalen Jacoby as well, I'm going to plug this. It's a talk show on ESPN. It's also a podcast, and on their Friday episode they did, Jacoby, who is in an interracial marriage, talked about having to explain to his kid why. So his child saw the killing of George Floyd on TV, and he also saw the shooting of Jacob Blake. And so having to explain to his kid why people that looked like him were getting killed. Kind of difficult. So with all that being said, the racial justice in this country cannot be forgotten. Even if it's not trendy to post about Black Lives Matter, even if it's not trendy to post a black square on your Instagram, don't forget about it. Register to vote. Do your part. Know where you stand. I think that's a huge thing. I know some people that struggle with trying to do everything they can, but as a white person, like, it's not your time. Like, you can be an ally. You can do everything you can. And again, I'm speaking from a white woman's perspective. As a white woman, I know everything I can do. I know how much I can do, but I also know that the most I can do is be an ally and support them and help them in any way I can. Donate money, do your research, and just try to make this place a better country. But how to slate to college football, getting to that. Sorry, I'm drinking my coffee. How to slate to college football. So, as we saw this summer, there's a true awakening with racial injustice in college football players that truly took the reins. The hashtag We Are United and hashtag We Want to Play movements showed us that players have a voice and a right to express that voice. Harry Lyles Jr. of ESPN, who's an ESPN college football reporter, had a really great piece that I recommend on how this summer was truly a summer of change for college football, how it gave players a voice and a right they don't normally have. Back in May, I'm going to read some excerpts from it. Excuse me. So back in May, Clemson linebacker Mike Jones Jr. knew that he had to do something after George Floyd was killed by the Minneapolis police. After calling his grandfather, James, who recalled how he marched with Martin Luther King Jr. decades ago, had this answer. After talking with him, I was like, eventually one day we will just go back and say, what did we do when certain things happened? What Jones did was help organize the Black Lives Matter protest with teammates Darren Reacher, Colin Powell, and Trevor Lawrence. He spoke in front of a few thousand people to share the reality Black people live with every single day in this country. I realized that once my career is over, I'll go from being an athlete to being a regular Black man in America. Jones told the crowd in June. This stuff is very real to me, Jones recently told ESPN. it could be me at any time. So it really hit me that is how it is. Some people might not understand, and that's why some people feel I was so passionate about. We Clemson family here. Everybody loves everybody. I know that people care about me, but they're not going to understand that, the possibilities of other things happening truly hurts me. Coral Powell told ESPN that any day it could be one of us. I got stopped the week before the protest, and the first thing that went through my mind, I suddenly got stopped because my car window tint was too dark. And the first thing I thought about was not the ticket, but the consequences that could come for me if I moved wrong or said the wrong thing. On top of that, the coronavirus has claimed the lives of a disproportionate number of Black people. According to reports, nearly 3 times as many Black Americans have died from the virus as white Americans. Meanwhile, much of America has been put on pause due to the pandemic, which has put a microscope on our country's imperfections. No sport or other events to distract us. Even with some sports returning to action, including the NBA resuming its season on July 31st, in the Orlando bubble, distractions were not enough. After police in Kenosha, Wisconsin shot James Lake several times in the back last Sunday, WNBA, NBA, NHL, MLB, MLS players decided that they'd take away sports even if it was for a couple of days. They took away sports so they could put an impact on what's really going on in the world and shed light on it, because we love sports. I love sports. It's my internship. I want to go into sports journalism. It's what I've wanted to do basically since I was 10 years old. Sports bring me a true joy in life. I don't think I could get from anything else, but I also know that there are bigger things in the world than the Magic Bucks game. I'm sorry, there is, and there's no getting around that. I remember one day I was watching CNN, and have your opinions on CNN, but I was watching the news, let's put it that way. And my dad came in and he was like, there's a basketball game on, why aren't you watching that? And I was like, Dad, there are bigger things going on in the world right now than the Lakers game. I'm just that's how it is. And obviously I can do my part as much as I can. I can learn, I can research, I can listen to interviews, documentaries. But as I'll get into that in the next segment, this documentary I watched for class, Not Just a Game, was very informative. I cannot recommend it enough, but it's relevant because this season there will be a storyline of player protests and player rights. The status of student athlete has also been called into question because it's clear how much money goes into college football. As I talked about, it is a $1 billion industry. Billion! Isn't that crazy to think about, you guys? $1 billion! And I think it feels kind of ludicrous now to call them student athletes because they are students, they are athletes, yes, but they're also money makers for the school. And I have always been very, very passionate about that we need to pay college football players. Excuse me, my nose is itching. I was very passionate about that since I was literally started watching college football. I wrote a speech on this when I was 14. Playing college football players and college athletes in general is the fair thing to do because for a lot of these players, it is their only shot at making it. For a lot of these players, if without football, without basketball, without their athletics, they have nothing. And so they also cannot work jobs while they are playing college sports. And for a lot of people, I know for me, I don't know where I'd be without a job during college. I would be very, very stressed and very scared all the time about my income. And I can't imagine these players who are on scholarships, yes, but they can't afford to get food some days and they're starving. What do? And so again, student athlete is a big quote unquote because while yes, they're students, while yes, they're athletes, they also make billions of dollars for schools. So as UCLA defensive back Elijah Grody, a member of the Pac-12 #WeAreUnited group, said, guys just want to hold their people accountable and call out things because they represent racism. They represent systemic racism among Black people in this country. So kinds of things we're calling out. So these are kinds of things we're calling out and want to change. Excuse me, my nose is itching. And this again goes back to paying student athletes because for some people, I've heard the argument in my day-to-day time that this is coming from people that do not share the same views as me, that these Black players do not deserve to be paid because they're going to go to the NFL and they're going to make millions, so why do we have to pay them in college? And that is not the case. Making the NFL is a very slim percentage, as is any pro sport. I think oftentimes when you're younger and more naive, I was like this. You thought that everyone made it. You thought that it wasn't that hard to make the NFL, and it is so hard. As you start to get more educated, as you start to inform yourself more, you realize that making a pro sport is very difficult, and we need to pay these athletes. And this past summer, with these hashtag We're United movements, was showcased that these players have a voice and that they're not going to be bogged down by their title as a student athlete. They are going to make an impact because they also have social media followings. You can look at Trevor Lawrence, who raised thousands of dollars for coronavirus, and so that's a weird coronavirus. You can look at Trevor Lawrence, who helped out and he got in trouble for trying to help raise money for a coronavirus pandemic and help people in need. That these players have a platform and they have a voice, and just because they cannot be paid for it does not mean they're going to stop trying. And we've already seen some tangible results. Iowa fired its longtime strength coach after complaining that he contributed to a team culture that demeaned its racial identity. Texas announced it would rename several buildings on campus and build a statue for the program's first black player. And Mississippi State running back Kylan Hill threatened not to play and pushed the state legislature to remove the Confederate image from Mississippi State flag. So, if you guys remember, Mississippi basically, Mississippi, if you guys did not know, they removed the Confederate symbol from their flag. But yes, the racial injustice kind of just came into fruition. It kind of really took a hold this summer. I feel like the most recent time I can remember of this was the Trayvon Martin incident. Again, I was younger. I did not keep up with the news as much, but it's really impactful to see the change that's going on in our country. I hope it continues. I hope that people don't stop talking about it just because it's not trendy, just because people don't want to talk about it. I feel like I don't see it as much on the news anymore. And obviously, we were talking about other things in the world. There's an election coming up. You guys, please vote. There's an election coming up. We have other things to talk about. Racial justice cannot stop just because it's not trendy. I've seen a lot in my own personal life. People just stop talking about it and stop acknowledging it because it's not the cool thing to talk about anymore. It's not what's trendy. It's not what's on the news, and that stinks. That really makes me sad. But yeah, I hope you guys remember to vote, educate yourselves, know that you can make a difference. Even if, like I've said, I know my place, I know what I can do, and I'm trying my hardest. I'm doing that. But, sorry, my parents, I see them right now, they're walking back. Wow, it's already been like 45 minutes, but yes. So, coming up, you guys, will be going over this weekend's games, so you guys can keep up with that, as well as going over the the Not Just a Game documentary that I spoke about earlier, so stay tuned.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. We have really just gone on a tangent. I'm loving this episode so far. I hope you guys are as well. I'm very passionate about this. If you cannot tell, I never want to make it too political, but again, as I've said, racial injustice and racism should not be political, and if that's your views, okay. I might not agree with you, but that's just my opinion. And I'm grateful that I have this platform to voice that. Obviously, again, I am a white woman in America, and I know my place. I know what I can do to help, and I'm doing everything I can. So just please remember to vote, register to vote. I finally did it a few weeks ago. I got all my friends to. registered about, take the time to educate yourself. Over the weekend, me and my boyfriend and I watched the 13 documentary, and it was very educational, very eye-opening. I had already seen it, and he had it, and so we sat down and watched that, and it was very eye-opening for both of us, once again. But let's get on to some lighter news. Well, not really lighter news, because we are going to keep talking about this, but we are going to preview some of the games for this weekend. So, as USA Today reported on Monday, the cases are rising at Power 5 conferences. Boulder has been back in school, and if we're being honest, I kind of glad I didn't go back. I miss it so much. I wish I was there. Don't get me wrong, but I have seen Snapchats, I have seen videos, and I do not believe that the students who are in the dorms will be there long. But that's just my opinion. Kids are partying like crazy. As you know, UNC got sent home. Other campuses are getting sent home. I feel like my TikTok page is just filled with like college kids being sent home from school. But this is not really good, if we're being honest. This is also what we expected, I think. When you are asking kids who have not had social interaction with anyone but their parents for 2 months to just not party, I think you are asking a lot of the kids, and it will be interesting to see how it goes. I don't know. I think that if we send the students home, it could be good for football, but we have games, guys. We have games. So this past weekend, Austin Peay versus Central Arkansas, the Guardian Credit Union FCS kickoff, was an interesting one. It was bizarre. It filled with a bizarre turnover hat and a punt that somehow went for negative yards. And that was only some of the weird stuff that happened. The FCS is the football championship subdivision. The only thing that felt normal was the heat and humidity, honestly. But people were pretty excited as this was played in Alabama. A report came out that one fan started tailgating at 11 a.m. on Friday, even though they did not play till Sunday. Football is pretty much life in the South, if we're being honest. I think there's no way around that, but it kicked off a pretty weird season. And the fact that Austin Peay and Central Arkansas took the field, it feels like a minor miracle because both conferences postponed competition until the spring, leaving the only possibility for non-conference games for them. So that's exciting. We had a football game, kind of interesting, but what will the season look like? We'll probably not have fans in stadiums. There is no doubt about that. Ohio State is very open about the fact that no fans in the stadium would cause them to lose more than $50 million. That's crazy, guys. Bye weeks are definitely going to be a possibility due to COVID. There's no way around that. If you are thinking that we will just slide through the season smooth sailing, I'm sorry, honey, but you are mistaken. You have false hope. I wish I had some of your hope, but I do not. Maybe that's the pessimist in me. I don't know. No Pac-12 and Big Ten. Well, maybe not the Big Ten. We've talked about that. As a senior in college, it's truly sad. A senior who goes to a Pac-12 school, I'm very sad. Last weekend, or yesterday, or a few days ago, I got a snap memory that 1 year ago today was our Rocky Mountain Showdown, which if you don't go to Boulder or Colorado State, then it was our big rivalry. It was the last time it ever happened, and it was just like, I got a video packed like hundreds of thousands of students packed in a parking lot to tailgate, and it was kind of just like, wow, like, life was like that a year ago. A year ago today, we didn't think anything of it. But I want to give a quick story about football, with Pac-12 football. So in one of my classes, I'm a sports writing class, there's a football player in my class, and he was talking about how it's just weird. There's no season. He doesn't really know what to do with himself. He's like, I've never had so much free time in all of college. They're obviously doing off-season workouts, but he just kind of touched upon how he doesn't really have, like, much to do with his life. But I just thought it was interesting. So, anyways, let us get into the games this season. We have to move past because I want to talk about the documentary as well. First game I'm going to cover is South Mississippi versus Alabama. South Alabama, excuse me. So South Alabama is coming off a 7-6 season. They're a more than 2 touchdown favorite in South Alabama that hasn't finished with a winning record in any season. Granted, South Alabama didn't become a Sun Belt team until 2012, and there was a 6-6 season in 2013. But they have a 9-27 record the past 3 years. Southern Miss did not practice this week in the wake of racial injustice. This was very common among campuses, especially with NFL teams as well. Southern Miss and South Alabama are set to kick off at The Rock on September 4th at 8 p.m. Despite being separated by just 900 miles, this is the first ever matchup between the two teams. A win would be the fourth time the Golden Eagles, the Southernmost Golden Eagles would have won their opening match in 5 years under their coach Jay Hobson. They're definitely ready to play as South Mississippi quarterback Jack Abram said, "The guys on the team, I think they're ready to play. We've been sitting around long enough with all these uncertainties and whether we'll be able to play or not, and now we're here. As coaches, we're trying to do our best and make sure we give these kids an opportunity to play college football and do the things they want to do." So again, this is being held at Roberts Stadium, home of the Southern Miss Golden Eagles, and the total is 53-5, and Southern Miss is favorite is minus 15 versus South Alabama. So there you go. I'm not really a betting woman. Betting is something I'm trying to get more into with college football, I guess you could say. It's not really my forte or my specialty. That's okay. The next game we'll be touching upon is Texas State versus SMU. Total 66.5. Texas State is a plus 20.5 plus 20.5 versus SMU. Being a road favorite is a new phenomenon for SMU. This is only the ninth time since SMU left the CSUA for the AAC that is favored on the road. The Mustangs have won 10 games in the season for the first time since 1984 last year. Texas State hasn't won more than 3 games in a season since 2014, so it makes sense. SMU is a 3-touchdown favorite, and it is at the Texas State Bobcats, so very interesting. Next up on our games to look at, we have Eastern Kentucky versus Marshall. Marshall has announced Grant Wells is started for Saturday, and this is a 10 a.m. West Coast time. And the big game I'm excited for is Navy BYU, people. I'm so excited. That is happening on Labor Day. This is the first Labor Day I will have off in 3 years. If you guys did not know, part of sorority recruitment at Boulder goes into Labor Day. I'm not really having it off because I'm working on Labor Day, but I'm just excited to know how to do sorority recruitment. I'm still in my sorority, obviously, but I'm working for this podcast. So Labor Day, I'm very excited. Does anyone have fun Labor Day plans? I don't, except watching college football and working, but probably like a beer or something. Not while working, obviously, but you know, my grandpa actually went to the Naval Academy, so shout out to him. I'm so sad he's not going to be here to watch with me. We have a tradition. When I was in town, of always watching the Navy games, the first Navy game together. Whenever Navy would play in St. A, we would go. He's still alive, but he's just out of town. He's visiting his girlfriend. But Navy is -1 versus BYU. And 2 option offenses is one weekend. This is this excerpt I'm reading. We almost have been good little college football fans this offseason. So I'm very excited for this game. The fact that the under is 15-7 when BYU has been an underdog under Khalil Stakey is interesting. This will make your Labor Day a little interesting or fun, if you will. I hope you all enjoy that little nugget they're giving us there. So games you're missing out on this weekend, we have Ohio State versus Illinois, Indiana versus Wisconsin, Nebraska versus Rutgers, Minnesota versus Michigan State. We have some pretty big games next weekend as well. I feel like this weekend will be a little less exciting of a kickoff. It usually is. It's usually like the first weekend's just kind of bleh with like one big game, and then it kind of gears up week 2, week 3. But, excuse me. Yes, so fun games to look out for this weekend. I'm so excited to wake up and have college game day and drink my coffee and get ready for football and wear my little Colorado shirt. I'm so excited. But so let's get on to this documentary. I keep teasing. I feel like no one's excited really to hear me talk about this. Well, maybe you guys are. I don't know. I thought it was very interesting, and it is called It's called Not Just a Game. So for my communications, sports, and society class, we get to watch this, and given everything going on with sports this week, I thought it would be a very good topic to discuss. I'm going to read an excerpt that describes the movie. So, in this exhilarating tour of the good, the bad, and the ugly of American sports culture, iconoclastic cultural historian and Nation magazine writer Dave Zurin offers that American sports are a lot more than just fun and games. Exploring the myth that the world of sports somehow stands outside of the world of politics and ideology, Zurin shows how American sports culture has long had a haven for the most reactionary attitudes and ideas, promoting everything from nationalism and militarism to sexist, racism, and homophobia. At the same time, he identifies an equally strong countercurrent, a history of rebel athletes who highest profile resistance to jigonistic patriotism, heterosexist masculine authority, white male privilege, and other forms of bullying have been reverberated beyond the playing field. Inspired by much of Zerwin's passion for politics as his passion for sports, this is a cultural study and media education at its best. A powerful classroom resource that shows how even the most benign pop culture forms have the power to shape young people's attitudes and ideas. If this is not the truth, I feel like growing up, sports did shape a lot of my ideals. It shaped a lot of how I think, how I operate. Obviously, not in every way, but as I've said, players do have a platform, and using that platform for better good is always nice. But this touches on the mix of sports and politics, which seems very natural to us, and I didn't really realize that until I was watching this, just how embedded they are. But you can look at what conferences are staying open and which states are leaning which way with regards to this season. In specific, I've touched upon this, that the states that are staying open, a majority are red states, while the states that are closing are blue states. And with regards to Donald Trump tweeting that he wants college football to play, some arguing there should be more behind the virus in the election. And so some believe that Trump is tweeting about that just so he can sway voters in the South to vote for him in the upcoming election and his re-election. But yes, you can also look at the #We United movement that happened this summer, and the injury component of sports. It's a huge thing we never talk about, is that the life expectancy of football players is 20 years younger than the average. Excuse me, oh my gosh, my neck is cramping. The life expectancy of football players is 20 years younger than the average person because of injury. It's a huge topic in this documentary because of the fact that a lot of players, if they get injured, they have nowhere to go, nowhere to turn to. Really, their career is over. And they kind of start to say, what now? Like, what am I going to do? And so injury insurance. I have long believed that college athletes need to be paid, given how much money they bring to the sport, and that has not changed given recent events. They deserve money for their performance, as well as injury insurance and the option to hire an NCAA agent through brand deals. This is something that I've been very passionate about, as touched on a previous segment. They can go through the quote-unquote influencer route. If you guys are not familiar with our influencers, it's kind of the new wave of our generations promoting things on Instagram. Usually they're like girls modeling, but in some cases it could be a football player using the influencer route to take marketing deals for Gatorade or other ad companies. Just make money on the side, because not everyone can be Trevor Lawrence or Joe Burrow. And for most footballs, their only chance at success, and the odds of success are so low. So not just a game, the powerful documentary, it's also based on the book, A People's History of Sports in the United States. Zerwin argues that far from providing merely escapist entertainment, American sports have long been in the center of some major political debates and struggles in our time. You can look at a big event that I always kind of remember when I think of sports and politics is the Pat Tillman event. Not really event. I don't know how to describe it, but if you guys are not aware of that, Pat Tillman was a star safety for the Arizona Cardinals, and after 9/11, he opted out of a big contract to pursue playing college football. Not college football. What am I saying? Oh my gosh. He opted out of a big contract extension with the Cardinals to enlist in the war, and he was killed in friendly fire. And there was a lot of controversy around that, and he was labeled as an American hero, and then there were news about how his death was wrongly reported. And so this film was broken up into 5 parts. Introduction, In the Arena, Like a Girl, Breaking the Color Barrier, and The Courage of Athletes. Zerwin first traces how American sports have glamorized militarism, sexism, racism, and homophobia. Then exacerbates a largely forgotten history of rebel athletes who stood up fought for power and fought for social justice beyond the field. This result is deeply moving and is exhilarating. Nothing less than an alternative history of power struggle in the United States as seen through the people that have played the games. This was a producer's description, and I think, especially given the Colin Kaepernick situation, that was a huge thing we talked about in our reflection regarding this documentary. Obviously, I remember where I was when the Colin Kaepernick stuff started happening. I don't think I remember I was, because it wasn't one specific day, but I remember watching the preseason game where he kneeled, and honestly, I thought there was nothing wrong with it. I understood he was kneeling against police brutality. I understood he was not objecting the flag, and people did not realize that. And obviously, you have your own opinions, like I keep saying. But I remember where I was, and it was kind of weird to think about. I was kind of like, why is everyone so mad about this? it also makes me a little angry that in sports, I touched upon this in my reflection as well, that people, excuse me, my mom just texted me, but yeah, it kind of makes me sad that especially in the NFL, we give so much leeway and forgiveness to players like Cardi and other players who have been accused of domestic violence, sexual assault, and horrific crimes against people. But obviously the lenience has gotten a little stricter with that, but we look at players like Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reed who are peacefully protesting the police brutality going on in our country and peacefully protesting the racial injustice we see every single day, and saying that and blackballing them essentially from the NFL. It makes me sad. And you can look at Dan Snyder, who is the owner of the Washington football team, recently renamed from another name I will not name, but he is still the owner of the team. He's been pressured to step down, but in the past few weeks, for allegations of sexual assault and stories from previous women employers about the conduct that they face there just makes me sad. And so the media makes us believe that athletics are all sunshine and rainbows. That's obviously not the case. This documentary, I really recommend it. It is free online for you to view. And if you're just looking for something to pass the time if you're still in quarantine, are we still in quarantine? I don't know. But yeah, I won't. So with all that being said, coming up, we're going to finish it off. All that being said, we are going to finish it off with our top 10 quarterbacks of the 2020 college football season. Let's get it.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Hello and welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Danielle. Welcome back to our final segment. A nice little top 10 list for you all to round out your day. Thank you so much for listening to me. I know this episode was very heavy. It was heavier than most of them, but if you guys cannot tell, I'm very passionate about the racial injustice going on in our country, and it makes me sad. Again, how many times can I say this? Register to vote. But for a little fun top 10 list today, we're going to look at some of the top 10 college football players or quarterbacks of the 2020 football season in college football. It's funny, I'm looking at the CFB acronym I have right now in my notes or my outline, and I just think it's funny because like most of my friends don't even know what that means, and for me, I'm like, oh, it's like common knowledge, I guess. But we also have to take into account the fact that the Big Ten and Pac-12 has been postponed and canceled. I have LOL in my notes, kind of sad. But yeah, again, this is my opinion. My opinion is my opinion. There will be controversy. Tweet at me, DM me, do with that what you will. But follow us on our socials and you can talk to me about it if you have any controversy. Did I leave out your quarterback that you think is the number one in the world? I'm so sorry to the Boulder quarterback, but you are not on this list. Scope up. So at number 10, we have Kevin Mon from Texas A&M University. I have TAM. Sorry. I just love my acronyms. Does anyone else have like weird acronyms for things in their life that make absolutely no sense? Like, it's so funny to me. I have like TAMU. I have no idea what that means to most people, but like that's how I look at Texas A&M University. So Kevin Mon entered the 2020 season with 34 starts under his belt. As I've talked about, he has 34 starts, but he's a lot of ways to go. There was a lot of hype around him when he got to College Station, especially because of the history there. I always think of College Station as the Johnny Manziel era, even though it's not. It's been a while, but Mont showed flashes of excellence throughout his career, but sometimes struggles to make routine plays. He just has a 57.8% career passing record and has played poorly against marquee opponents. The 2020 season schedule is a favorable one for the Aggies, though, and Mont is set up for a strong senior season. So, again, Kevin Mont at number 10. At number 9 on here, people, we have Jamie Newman from Georgia. So, as we talked about the Georgia QB competition with JT Daniels and Jamie Newman, it's clear Jamie Newman is probably going to be the starter. He sees the opportunity to start for his former school, Wake Forest, in late 2018 when starter Sam Hartman went down with a leg injury. He helped Wake Forest rally to a bowl game down the stretch and carried them and took over the starting role in 2018. He is transferred to the University of Georgia, where he will play for his final season. The fans in Athens are expecting big things. Newman will have much more talent around him, but he will be facing tougher competition and huge expectations. So he's number 9 on this list. A lot of talent, a lot of tape from Wake Forest, but again, he's playing in Georgia now, which is a little bit tougher of a conference and competition, and there's also more pressure around him. At number 8, we have Spencer Sanders of Oklahoma State. Out of all the quarterbacks on this list, Spencer Sanders has the chance to take the biggest step forward in this 2020 season. He had an up-and-down redshirt freshman year. He threw for 2,065 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions in 11 games. He also rushed for 628 yards, which is the second most among all freshman quarterbacks. He is equipped with speed and passing the ball. He could be one of the most feared playmakers in college football. Sanders is seen as a potential Heisman contender this season, especially given the fact that Justin Fields will not be playing. At number 7, we have Mac Jones of Alabama. The University of Alabama Crimson Tide. Mac Jones, he has acquitted himself well when he stepped in for the injured Tua Tagovailoa towards the end of the 2019 season. In his 3 starts, Jones threw for 937 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. He completed 68% of his passes. He has Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs on his side. He is more than capable of leading the offense. It'll be interesting to see how he takes over for Tagovailoa. But, yeah, I mean, since the Crimson Tide missed the College Football Playoff last year, it'll be interesting to see if he's able to help them there. And he has to fend off a 5-star freshman looking to take the starting job. But he's number 7 on this list because there's already some game tape, but it'll be interesting to see where he goes. At number 6, we have Ian Bock of Notre Dame. He returned to South Bend for his 3rd season, and Ian Bock will also notably be playing in the ACC this season since Notre Dame joined them, which will be very interesting to see. But he has a 21-3 starting record as Notre Dame's starter. He saw his completion percentage drop considerably from 68.2 in 2018, where he led the Irish to a college football playoff semifinals to 60.2 in 2019. On the other hand, his touchdown total jumped from 2019 and 2018 to 34 in 2019. He's one of the two FBS quarterbacks to account for 2,500 yards, 500 rushing yards, and 30 TD passes in 2018, joining Jalen Hurts, who is now with the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFL. Number 5 on my list is KJ Costello from Mississippi State. You guys know how much I love KJ Costello. You know how much I adore him. I don't know why I have such an affinity for him. I think it's because my mom would just stand with him. I'm always like, oh, yes, KJ Costello, my man. But after playing an injured year as a junior at Stanford, KJ Costello decided to move on from his final year and found a soft landing spot at Mississippi State, where Mike Leach has just taken over. He was a breakout performer in 2018, where he threw for 3,540 yards and 29 touchdowns. Now he will operate Mike Leach's pass half the offense that turned Gardner Minshew and Anthony Gordon to NCAA passing leaders at Washington State the past 2 seasons. At number 4, we have Sam Howell from North Carolina. So when Mac Brown went to North Carolina after his reign at Texas, he swooped in and kept Sam Howell. He was once a Florida State commitment and his hometown. Howell immediately earned the starting role as a true freshman. After combining for 5 wins in the previous 2 seasons, Howell led a UNC back to the postseason and threw for 3,641 yards and 38 touchdowns with only 7 interceptions. His touchdown total is the 3rd best single season mark in the ACC history behind Deshaun Watson and Jameis Winston. The sky is truly the limit as he enters his sophomore season. At number 3 on my list, we have Sam Ehlinger from Texas. You guys once again know how much I love Sam Ehlinger. I adore him as a quarterback. And he worked his way into the starting role as a true freshman in 2017 and has not looked back. Tom Herman, the University of Texas coach, has given them the keys to the offense as the program has tried to move back to the college football pecking order. He led the Longhorns to 3 straight winning seasons and 3 bowl wins. In the process, Ehlinger has thrown for 8,870 yards, 68 touchdowns, and 22 interceptions. The Sugar Bowl victory last season over Georgia was a high point so far. He wants to lead Texas to a Big 12 title as a senior. Obviously, he will have to battle against Oklahoma, who is having Spencer Rattler come in and start for them. At number 2, we are going through this list very fast, people. We have Kyle Trask from Florida. Excuse me, I itched my back. If you watched the Florida game last season, you know his story. The 2018 season was the first time Trask was started for the team since his freshman year of high school. He took over the reins for Dan Mullen's offense when Felipe Frank was injured and played well down the season. As a senior, Trask can make a big leap forward in 2018, especially given the fact that the Florida Gators are trying their damn hardest to make the return to college football glory. So before we continue with this list, sorry, I'm moving this list kind of fast, people. At number 10, we have Kevin Mon from Texas A&M University. Number 9, we have Jamie Newman from the University of Georgia. At number 8, we have Spencer Sanders from Oklahoma State. At number 7, we have Mac Jones from Alabama. At number 6, we have Ian Bach from Notre Dame. At number 5, we have KJ Costello from Mississippi State. At number 4, we have Sam Howell from North Carolina. At number 3, we have Sam Ehlinger from Texas. At number 2, we have Kyle Trask from Florida. And at number 1, people, we got Trevor Lawrence, who also to be on this list. You guys all know Trevor Lawrence. I talk about him almost every single episode. He is truly the notable quarterback in college football. He is the one people look out for. This is presumed to be his final season before he declares the NFL draft. He has lived up to the 5-star number 1 billing recruit billing that he was offered. He has obviously lived into college football playoff in his first 2 seasons, including a national championship as a true freshman. He's truly just the epitome of a college quarterback and the number 1 quarterback this season, especially since Justin Fields is not playing. But thank you guys for tuning in today so much. Sorry, this episode was a little shorter than normal, but I want to thank you guys again also for listening to me as I talk about issues that are very close to my heart. And yeah, with all that being said, thank you guys for tuning in today. Please give us a review and rating on iTunes. It very helps us out. Thank you for tuning in this evening. We really appreciate you all. As always, make sure to follow us on our social media, on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and rate and review us on iTunes. It really helps us out. Thank you guys so much for listening. Have a great night, and I will talk to you all on Monday.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From football to basketball, baseball to MMA, and even soccer. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast.